but we do have some dynasty trade values because there's a lot of leagues trades. They're still happening or they're going to be opening back up soon. So let's get into it. Nate, who's the player that you want to talk about trades values first today?
Yeah, we kind of anointed him as the next big thing, as the wide receiver 1 for this draft class, and he hasn't really been that so far this season. Let's talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. He's currently at his lowest value on Keep Trade Cut since he entered the league, which is wide receiver 9, so it's really not that low.
Yeah.
He might be overvalued at the moment. Let's talk about it. He is a wide receiver 32. At the moment, entering Sunday, averaging 10.4 points per game. Not what we expected, not what we hoped for. And against this today, against Carolina Panthers, he had 4 receptions for 39 yards, Mike. 0 touchdowns. Not the performance we're hoping against a team like the Panthers, especially when the Cardinals scored like 30 points. We expected a lot more out of Marvin Harrison this year. He did have a pretty good performance week 2 after a poor performance week 1, but has been very up and down since then. Mike, he's still very expensive to go acquire, though. We're not going to totally dismiss a player after just the rookie season. Let's be honest, the wide receiver 32 finish would not be the most disappointing finish in the world, but certainly for a guy like Marvin Harrison, who people were taking in the first, second round of their redraft leagues, which is little crazy to start out with. Maybe you should take him to league neighbors. But Marvin Harrison, let's look at the trade values, Mike. And I know how you're going to react to this first one. Marvin Harrison Jr. straight up for A.J. Brown.
I'm going to stick with A.J. Brown here.
I'm going to do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still, very positive about Marvin Harrison long-term. If his value continues to drop, I will consider him a buy. But at this price, I'd be selling Marvin Harrison. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, especially if my team's really good. I want A.J. Brown, man. A.J. Brown's only 27, so it's not like you're buying a guy like Mike Evans, who still has a bunch of years left in him as well, but he's older than A.J. Brown, obviously. So people just love to sell A.J. Brown for whatever reason. I feel like they think he's older than what he really is.
I think so.
But give me A.J. Brown.
Yeah. All right, how about this next trade? We did see this guy kind of break out this week. I believe he had 20 points. Xavier Worthy in a first-round pick or Marvin Harrison? I know, because neither one of us are super high on Xavier Worthy, so this one's a little tough one for us.
Well, I like Xavier Worthy. He's just very inconsistent. I think this is what it costs to get Marvin Harrison right now. I could say that I don't really like this trade. I like Marvin Harrison better. But the way that the Cardinals played today, nobody really had a lot of receiving yards.
No, just James Conner kind of had the best game. I mean, he had like 30 points.
And Michael Wilson Jr. had the highest receiving yardage for a wide receiver. That was 44. I don't know. I think if I'm moving Marvin Harrison Jr. for a player in a first, I want a different, more consistent player, honestly.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think value-wise, this is pretty fair. But like you said, I don't love making the move for Xavier Worthy. But value-wise, I do think it is a very fair trade for both sides. All right, Mike, last trade I got here for you. Marvin Harrison Jr. or DJ Moore and Breece Hall?
DJ Moore, I think, is having a better season than people think he is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not anything. I mean, we're at 826 yards on the season and 5 touchdowns, which isn't terrible, considering Caleb Williams has had some up and downs. I think it's another one that's pretty fair. Honestly, you're getting Breece Hall on top of it. I don't hate the trade.
Yeah, I like the package shot here, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I said, I love Marvin Harrison Jr., but, if I can get a guy like DJ Moore whose production it's been better this year than Marvin Harrison. But even moving forward, I think comparable, or even if Marvin Harrison does hit his stride, DJ Moore is still a very good wide receiver. And I expect Caleb Williams to improve. But adding on Breece Hall here, who is a very good running back in his own right and still a top 5 running back in Dynasty, I think that really pushed this right over the edge. And I'm going to take the Breece Hall, DJ Moore side here.
Yeah, let's talk about a quarterback here, and that's Atlanta Falcons quarterback Michael Penix Jr. He was named the starter after Kirk Cousins won a game. 8th overall pick in this last draft, which a lot of us thought was kind of an odd pick there. Maybe it still is. Was it a good pick with bad timing? We could look back. The Eagles had signed Carson Wentz to a $100 million contract and then drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round. And I'll still say it was a bad draft pick. Did it work out well? Yes, but at that time, that was a bad draft pick. So both things can be true. And in his first start, which was a 34-7 win versus the lowly New York Giants, and sir, that I saw at the beer distributor today before the games that was a Giants fan, this one is for you. He was 18 of 27 for 202 yards, no touchdowns and a pick, 4 rushes for 3 yards. So not anything super impressive, but his first full game action.
Not terrible. Not great.
Not terrible. What does it cost to get Michael Penix Jr.? If you're a believer and you haven't had a chance to get him, let's find out. Got a nice little package deal here. Put this on here for you. Mark Andrews and Breece Hall for Michael Penix Jr., Keon Coleman, and Chris Godwin.
This would be such an easy trade for me to make. Give me Mark Andrews and Breece Hall.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm getting the 2 best players out of the 5 players here.
I would agree. And this trade did happen yesterday, the 21st. So this was after he was already named starter. All the trades that I put on here, courtesy of Fantasy Calc, yours are courtesy of Dynasty Daddy. So these were all after he was named starter. Another one, a 25 first and a 25 second for Michael Penix Jr. and Kenneth Walker III. That's another super flex trade.
Yeah, I'm pretty okay with this value-wise, just from like a value standpoint. I'd probably rather have the first and second round pick, especially because as much as I do like Kenneth Walker, or Ken Walker, whichever one he's going by now, Zach Charbonnet has really burst onto the scene and limited Kenneth Walker's production. Though I don't have a great idea of how they split their carries and production this game today. And Mike, if you can look at that real quick, so I don't seem like a dummy for saying that Zach Charbonnet has taken up Kenneth Walker's work, but he sure has the last couple of weeks while Kenneth Walker's been out. And Zach Charbonnet was even named as a captain for today's game. So, he's definitely worked himself into that backfield. So as much as I love Walker, I'm going to take the first and the second here. I'm not a big believer in Michael Penix Jr., so I would like to re-roll unless I really need a quarterback, because as we talked about, this draft class coming up is not a great quarterback class. So unless you can pick one of the first 2 guys, you're probably not going to get much at quarterback.
Kenneth Walker, 8 carries for 31 yards, no touchdowns. Zach Charbonnet, 1 carry for -1 yards. In the receiving game, Walker, 8 catches for 28 yards, and Charbonnet, 2 catches for 14 yards, even though he was brought in to open up the passing game to the running backs.
Name a guy a captain, you give him 3 touches.
Yeah, how about that?
Impressive. Either way, neither one of them did great. So
Pete Carroll would never. And then the last one, another super flex trade, Patrick Mahomes for Michael Penix Jr. and a 25 second. I think teams going in different directions here.
Give me Mahomes.
Yeah, I still want Mahomes. If I'm trading Mahomes away, I want something better than Michael Penix, to be honest with you. So
this is a great buy low on Patrick Mahomes right now.
For sure. Yeah. Nate, what do you have for us next? What's another value?
Yeah, let's talk about Chuba Hubbard, running back for the Carolina Panthers. Just had 25 rushes for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns today. Also added on 4 catches and 13 yards. It was impressive, Mike, wasn't it?
He's so good.
He is really good. And, he was really good in college. He didn't have a great final season, and he dropped a bit in the draft because of it. If he had come out after his junior year, he would have been probably a second or third round pick. Senior didn't go quite as well, but once he hit his stride in the NFL, we're seeing it now that he is an NFL running back, quality back at that. He signed an extension just a couple weeks ago, and he is signed with the team through the 2028 season. So he's there for a while. Of course, they have a couple outs after next season, but they have him there for a long time. And at the moment, Jonathan Brooks seems like a non-factor. With his re-injury to his knee, he's going to be out for probably the majority of next season, if not the whole season, depending on how his rehab comes back. And then what are we even expecting after that? And it's really unfortunate because I do believe that Jonathan Brooks was a really good running back who could have had a lot of promise, but after 2 knee injuries, I feel like we're kind of headed down the J.K. Dobbins career path, and that's not something I really want a part of. And that might not be something that the Panthers really want to invest too much into moving forward either. So Chuba Hubbard, they did a good job signing him at the right time because he does seem to be the future of that backfield. And we'll talk about maybe some other players on that offense in a little bit, but that offense is looking better as of late. So at the moment, RB14 on the season, Chuba Hubbard is somebody that you want on your team moving forward. Mike. So let's look at the prices because I don't think the market's really caught up to what his production is going to be moving forward, especially with the job security that he now has. First trade that I grabbed here, Braylon Allen and a second-round pick for Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Even though I did lay out that whole thing where maybe the Jets move on, and Brandon Allen's the guy. If they move on from Breece Hall, still give me Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard was with the 21-yard touchdown today that won the game for the Panthers in overtime too. So sealed that win against the Cardinals. But I'm doing this one for sure.
Yeah, and that 21-yard touchdown came after like a 28-yard run right before that. He really carried that team in overtime and got them the win. Impressive stuff. This next trade, Bucky Irving for Chuba Hubbard and a second-round pick.
Yeah.
Please and thank you.
Yeah, and I like Bucky Irving. I think he's doing great things down there in Tampa, but Chuba's the guy.
Chuba's the guy. And if this was Bucky Irving straight up for Chuba, I would be, I could see either side. But when you throw a second on top of Chuba, give me that value. Give me Chuba Hubbard over Bucky Irving there. And then, Mike, going across positions here, Matthew Stafford for Chuba Hubbard. What side you taking?
I'm going to take Chuba Hubbard. Stafford's playing some really good ball this year.
Not today.
Not
yes,
today.
Yes.
Overall, yeah, but he's an aging guy. Could retire at any time. You never know. Give me Chuba.
Nice. All right, Mike. We have to have kind of a sad conversation, but let's talk about this next guy.
We do, and I feel so bad for him. Let's talk about Houston Texans wide receiver Tank Dell. Talk about a wide receiver room that's just continuing to get decimated down there. First, the Chiefs, 6 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown. A terrible knee injury. And I mean, in the span of the year, of 1 calendar year, Nate, this guy has broken his leg, gotten shot, and now had a knee injury. This is a great player when he's on the field. I feel so bad because he's getting shot. Obviously, that didn't happen on the field. So what are we doing here? We see the talent. Prayers up for Tank Dell. Hopefully, we see him back soon. But what does it cost if you're like, hey, look, I'm going to take a dart throw on good old Tank real quick. Mike Evans for Tank Dell in a 25-second. 2 different teams going in 2 different directions here.
Yeah. I feel like value-wise, this works for either side. I am at the moment hesitant to buy into Tank Dell until we get some more information on his injury. And something I brought up a lot over the offseason, just regarding the Texans wide receiver room as a whole. Nico Collins is 25 years old. Tank Dell is also 25 years old. So it's not like Tank Dell came into the league as a young rookie. He was like the young new guy. He's the same age as Nico Collins. So, I think these injuries and the age play into a part where I'm probably going to take Mike Evans if I'm at all competitive this year or next year, because I don't know what Tank Dell is going to give me next year. And, as nice as, and if this is an early 25-second, maybe that does sway me to the Tank Dell side, take a dart throw on him, take the 25 early second. But if this is a mid to late second, I'm going with Mike Evans' side. You're
going to see a lot more guys of this age coming into the league too, especially now that the NCAA is saying that JUCO does not count against your eligibility. So did you see where somebody mapped out how you could stay in college for 11 years?
Yep. even through the Olympic red shirt in there.
You can move Tank Dell for Keenan Allen and Cortland Sutton.
Yeah. If you're a rebuilding team, I understand, wanting to take a shot on Tank Dell. But, yeah, I'm taking the Keenan Allen, Cortland Sutton. I don't know how much more we have out of Keenan Allen, but he's actually had a really good end to this season.
He had a good day today.
Yeah, the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's had 3 or 4 games with 20-plus points. So he's been really on top of it as of late, even though we called him Fat Keenan to start the season. But Cortland Sutton, also wide receiver 1 for Bo Nix. He's had a great season. So I'm taking the package here pretty easily.
Okay, and another one, Rachaad White in the 25-3rd.
Yeah. I think Rachaad White has been undervalued for a lot of the season. His production has way outmatched how his market value has been handled. And even going into next year, I don't think he's going to be in the Buccaneers. I believe he's in a contract year this year. But this is a guy that has staying power in the NFL because of his ability to pass protect and catch balls out of the backfield. So I think he's going to land in a good spot where, I was excited about Antonio Gibson when he moved away from the Commanders. But I think Rachaad White is going to have a better move away from his original team. I think he's a bit more well-polished as a running back than Antonio Gibson was. So I think Rachaad White's still going to have some upside moving forward for the next couple of years.
Rachaad White is technically under contract until 2026.
Okay, so he's got 1 more season.
Yeah, but it's a really, really cheap dead cap hit to cut him or, that he could be traded, of course, too. But I don't think he's on the Buccaneers next year either, with Bucky Irving coming in and playing so well. So, all right, that's what I got for Tank Dell. Nate, what is your next trade value?
All right, let's talk about Jaylen Waddle. Unfortunately, did miss today's game. But this is actually his first missed game of the season, despite dealing with a couple different injuries throughout the season. He has missed some time at points throughout the season. Right now, wide receiver 41, Mike. A little bit of a drop-off from last year where he was wide receiver 34 in 14 games. He did average 14.2 points per game last year. This year, he's got 54 catches for 700 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's only 10 points per game. Now, a little bit of that can definitely be thrown into the fact that Tua missed a good chunk of the season at the beginning of the year. That certainly affected both Waddle and Tyreek Hill's production. Achane ended up being a huge benefactor of that, as they had to throw a lot of short passes. But Jaylen Waddle, 26 years old, still hitting his prime. Someone that we've seen had some really high highs in this league, has finished at the top the wide receiver grouping there. So someone we're still very excited about moving forward. But with the up and down that we've seen throughout this year, and the fact that he's tied to a quarterback that has had health issues in the past, how are we valuing him moving forward? Because as much as we both love Jaylen Waddle, at this point, he is not one of the young new guys on the block. He is in that kind of middle age wide receiver tier. So first one I got off of Dynasty Daddy is T. Higgins for Jaylen Waddle and a second-round pick. What side you taking here, Mike?
I want T. Higgins.
You want T. Higgins?
I do. I want T. Higgins.
T. Higgins has looked very good.
He has. I think he's going to go somewhere,
Yeah.
and he's going to be a wide receiver 1 wherever he goes. And I'd rather have that than, more of Jaylen Waddle's inconsistencies. And at this point, this next year, I could be saying something completely different. But right now, in this vacuum, I want T. Higgins.
Would it worry at all if T. Higgins stayed on the Bengals?
No, he's coexisted with Jamar Chase for the last few years, and I don't see anything changing with that.
Yeah, Joe Burrow seems like a plenty good quarterback to support 2 great wide receivers.
I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. Did you see that Joe Burrow said that he was going to do whatever he could do to make it happen, that T. Higgins would stay with the Bengals? Do you take that into account? Do you think that means anything, or you think that's just him saying something? But
well, the whole thing that I have about that is T. Higgins is going to go where the money is, and I can't say I blame the guy for doing that. So if it's not in Cincinnati, he's got to do what's best for him, and I get it.
Yeah. I'd be very excited to see T. Higgins as the wide receiver 1 on a couple of different teams. There's some really good opportunities for him going into next year. I'm on the same I think this is really fair. I don't know if I have a strong lean either way, but I do really like what T. Higgins has done over the past couple of years in coexistence with Jamar Chase. And I do really think that he has that top 12 potential when he's a wide receiver 1 somewhere else. So I'll also lean the T. Higgins side here. The next trade I got for Jaylen Waddle, Mike Evans and Jalen Wright for Jaylen Waddle. What you thinking?
I still want Mike Evans.
Ooh.
Jalen Wright's a nice piece. I think Raheem Mostert will be gone next year. He should be. His playing time, he gets banged up a lot. He's older. So Jalen Wright could be a factor in that Dolphins offense, which likes to rotate backs in and out. Forgive me. And Mike Evans, man, he's Mike Evans. Why would I want Mike Evans?
I do love me some Mike Evans, but I'm going to take the young guy here. I'm going to take Jaylen Waddle here.
Okay.
And then final trade here, 2 running backs for Jaylen Waddle, Kendre Miller and Tyrone Tracy.
Bye. I'll take Jaylen Waddle here.
All right, me too. I'm not a Kendre Miller fan.
Yeah, you got a guy that's always hurting a stopgap running back on a bad team. So
you tell it like it is, Mike.
Hey, look, why sugarcoat anything? Short, sweet, to the point. That's how
I will say Tyrone Tracy had a very nice toe drag touchdown today. We said stopgap running back on a bad team, but we do not need to take away the fact that Tyrone Tracy is playing very well this year. We do appreciate what he's done this year, but when we're looking long term, we have to take that into account.
For sure. And let's talk about some more long term. And let's talk about Cincinnati Bengals running back Chase Brown, averaging 16.3 fantasy points per game.
Mm-hmm.
The Zach Moss injury, I don't want to see anybody get hurt. However, the only benefit to that as a fantasy player is it's just opened up. They signed Zach Moss because maybe they weren't sure if Chase Brown could be the guy. And now they've been shown that, hey, guess what? Chase Brown, he can, in fact, be the guy. and he appears to be their back of the present and the future. I don't see any reason to move on from him. He's been a reliable starter weekly for fantasy for the Bengals. And today, just like this last pod, we're recording this on Sunday night, 18 carries, 91 yards, 3 receptions, 18 yards, no touchdowns. That was in a 24-6 win versus the very, very lowly Cleveland Browns. What does it cost to get Chase Brown? Nate, a 25 first. So we're a potential of a really good stud running back. But if you want to get a good current running back where we know his situation, we know what his role is, this is what it costs. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm good with this. I think this is a very fair cost for Chase Brown, and I'm happy to pay it.
Yeah, same here. Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. I think Tyreek,
29 yards and a touchdown today.
He's still a good wide receiver. I'm not going to try to dismiss him and say like he's lost it or he's washed up at this point. I'm sure he's still going to be very productive over the next couple of years. But I think, I like to be the guy that gets out a year early than a year too late. And I think Chase Brown's set up for a lot of success over the next couple of seasons. So I'll take Chase Brown.
Yeah, and he's under contract, Tyreek is, for the next 2 years. I'm curious to see if he wants out. Just because
it's going to really – I'm really interested to see what Miami does as a whole. I think, Mike McDaniel's on the hot seat. Maybe not the hot seat, but his seat's definitely warm at this point.
Up.
It's warming up for sure. So we might see some changes down there. If it's not this offseason, if they don't have a great season next season, it's definitely next offseason. So
here's an interesting one for you. CMC, a 25 first and a 27 second for Chase Brown and a 25 third. Sounds like someone's chasing a championship with this trade.
Sure does. And unless I'm chasing the championship, I'm going to take the CMC in the first round pick side. I do like Chase Brown, of course, but I don't think that CMC is completely done. I think this is a great buy opportunity for CMC. I think some people are pretending like he's already retired, which I don't think there's any chance of that happening. This guy is very competitive, very adamant about his rehab process, and he's going to come back strong and be ready for next season. So I think this is a steal if you're trying to get CMC. You get a first-round pick and a second-round pick on top of it. A great package here if you're looking to sell Chase Brown.
For sure. All right, Dave, what do you have next for us?
All right. One other player on the Panthers I want to talk about because, I was bought into the Panthers offense this year, and maybe I was just a year too early. Maybe next year is the year that we really want to have some parts of the Panthers offense for fantasy football. But do we want a piece of Bryce Young? Currently the quarterback 37 in points per game, quarterback 30 on the season. He's got a 10-9 touchdown interception ratio. Let's be honest, it hasn't been great. But over the past 4 weeks, not including today, because Fantasy Pros did not have up-to-date information quite yet. Over the 4 weeks prior to today's games, he's been the quarterback 17. Not incredible, but decent.
Improvement.
Improvement for sure. So, what we've seen with Bryce Young, we know that Dave Canales, their head coach, has been a bit of a quarterback guru. Last year, he brought Baker Mayfield and had a career year with him. The year before that, he had a career year with Geno Smith. So Dave Canales certainly seems like the quarterback whisperer that we now have down there in Carolina. And we're starting to see the improvement with Bryce Young. Maybe a full offseason with Canales as the head coach there. Another year of getting those young offensive pieces around him like Leggett, Sanders, Chuba. Another season, maybe they get him some more help. I think Bryce Young, is one of those players where, we saw the roller coaster of it this year. We're probably not done seeing the roller coaster, but it's a gamble you can take. Former first overall pick. Their upside is certainly there, but we've already seen the downside. I mean, he was benched this year for Andy Dalton pretty early in the season. So a lot of risk, a lot of reward with Bryce Young. What are we feeling with these trade values, Mike? The first one I got for you is Baker Mayfield for Bryce Young and a first-round pick.
I think I'm still going to stick with Baker on this one.
All right. I think that's very reasonable. It's a safe option. If Bryce Young hits, of course, you're going to look at this, but, I would have loved to have Bryce Young in the first-round pick. I'm a pretty big Bryce Young fan, but I think with the risk that you take in here, I think I'd also rather have Baker Mayfield, who's continued to look really good despite losing Chris Godwin a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I agree.
Next up here, Bryce Young across the position for James Conner.
I'm going to lean Bryce Young here. I think, at some point, especially next year, if Bryce Young's playing pretty well, you can get something better than James Conner for him. So James Conner, look, he signed an extension. I guess Trey Benson's just not quite ready yet, but give me Bryce Young.
All right. I'll lean Bryce Young as well, just because of the value of the quarterback position.
Yeah.
And then, Mike, let's talk about quarterback for quarterback. Both guys are gamble. Bryce Young or Michael Penix Jr.?
I'm going to slightly lean Bryce Young here just because of the bigger body of work that he has to work with and seeing the improvement. Michael Penix has only had one start. So I'm going to lean Bryce Young here. And hey, look, in a couple weeks, Michael Penix plays more. I could be saying something different, or even this time next year, it's completely different. But for right now, I lean Bryce Young slightly.
Yeah, this is a tough one because I also lean Bryce Young in a vacuum, but I do know that the Atlanta Falcons definitely have better offensive weapons around Michael Penix Jr. than the Carolina Panthers have put around Bryce Young to this point.
I would agree with that.
So, we didn't see a lot from Michael Penix today. Nothing that was, too terrible, but nothing that was too great. We need to have a bigger sample size, which is going to be hard with only a couple games left in the season. It's going to be a very interesting off-season discussion around Michael Penix Jr. I'm not sure I'm ready for it. But I'm also going to lean Bryce Young here, but I do think it's pretty fair either way, depending on however you want to lean.
Do you know who the leading receiver for the Falcons was today?
Darnell Mooney.
Yes, it was.
86 yards, I want to say.
82. Drake London, wide receiver 0, had 59. Kyle Pitts, 1 catch for 7 yards.
And Kyle Pitts also had a ball go into his hands. He basically caught it and then just flipped it over to the defense. It was ruled an interception. So Michael Penix, it did throw an interception, but to be fair, it was basically caught by Kyle Pitts, and then he just gave it to the other team. So
thanks a lot, Kyle Pitts. Our last one here, I did the 25-101 last week, and that was the Ashton Genty across the board. This week, and this will be the last one I do, because then after this, whatever. Let's talk about the 2025-102, which could be Tet McMillan, could be Shedeur Sanders, maybe even Cam Ward, depending on how you view the quarterbacks in this class. I like Cam Ward a little bit better as of right now. That's before me doing a full film breakdown analysis of any of these guys. But this is a pick where you're going to get either the first quarterback or wide receiver off the board. I'm leaning super flex here, okay? In a one quarterback league, maybe it's another running back. I don't know. It depends on how the draft shakes down. I think we could all agree that Ashton Genty is the lock-in 101 in this class across all platforms. So the question is, what do you want to do? Do you want to go Tet McMillan? Do you want to go Shedeur Sanders? And a lot of things are going to shake down between now and our rookie drafts. So there's a lot of time. But let's go back to that Fantasy Pros value pick sheet. And this is valued at 63. The 101 was 65. So not too far off. Okay. So this is your consolation if you can't get up to the 101. So let's make a trade. Let's do some hypothetical trades here. Nate, let's say you're at the 110. Okay. The value of that is 46. But you feel that you're one piece away. You need either a really good wide receiver, you need another quarterback, you need something because you know what? You're tired of finishing in third place. You can't stand it anymore. Okay. How do we jump up? Here's some thoughts. The 110 and Trey Benson, whose value is a 28. I don't know if that gets it done.
I don't know if it gets it done because I feel like you have to probably overpay. You have to overpay a little bit to jump up to the 102.
I agree.
But I like the idea of where we're headed here.
I'm just kind of basing this off values, picking guys that are close. Here's another one. The 110, Tajay Spears, his value is 16, and an early third, which is a 17 value. So this is a little bit more of an overpay. Tajay Spears, bit inconsistent, but he's had some flashes this year.
Had 2 touchdowns today.
He did. Yeah. What do you think?
I like this trade. I would make this trade as well to jump up to the 102. I think it's really important. If you can get from a late first round pick to an early first round pick at this point of the season, you're doing yourself a huge favor because you can overpay right now and it'll be an underpay in 3 months.
Yeah. And now's a good time where even if you're in the playoffs, I would start some conversation with league mates if you're looking to retool your roster when the if your trade deadline's closed, or you want to get things going. It depends. Some leagues, and I love when they do this, they open it right back up after the playoffs are over and people could start doing it. I love that. It's like, hey, we're not done here, or look, maybe you want to just double up in the first round and keep the 110. Some players of equal value to the 102, which again is a 63. Guys like Baker Mayfield, he's valued at 65. Saquon Barkley could be a straight up trade with 63. And Marvin Harrison Jr., his is a 64. No tight ends they were all in the low 50s. So you'd have to add to any of the tight ends. I just chose a guy from each of those 3 positions to tell you, here's your close value. That's on a scale of 1 to 100, by the way.
Yeah, I don't hate, but I don't love any of these trades. I don't know how I feel about them. Baker Mayfield, this goes back to the quarterback issue in this draft class. I don't love Shador Sanders or Cam Ward much more than Baker Mayfield. I think it's probably kind of similar.
Yeah.
If you want to re-roll the dice, you're certainly more than welcome to, but I think Baker Mayfield is in a good position right now, and he's been performing really well. Probably stick with him. Barkley after this season, I would need more than the 102 to move Barkley. Marvin Harrison, that does feel more fair for the 102. You can kind of re-roll with Ted McMillan or a quarterback of your choice. Seems fair. I don't know if I'd do it. I still do believe in Marvin Harrison and the upside that he brings. But hey, we were just talking about it in the last podcast. Last podcast, beginning of this podcast. Marvin Harrison has really been a disappointment to most people so far this season. So, and he doesn't have great excuse as to why. It's not like Rome Odunze where he's playing with two other really good wide receivers. Marvin Harrison should be the wide receiver one there, and by head and shoulders.
I don't get it. I don't know, but that's the 102 for you. So pick your poison, whoever you want there. Tet, Shador, Cam Ward, whoever you guys want at 102.
Who knows who else?
So that's going to wrap. Yeah, hey, that'll shake out between now and April. This is what we're looking at now, but a lot of things always change. There's always those late draft process risers. Like Jalen Coker. I don't think that's the guy we scouted. He came out of there, had some flashes late in the season here for the Panthers. So there's always going to be those guys. So until next time, make sure you hop in our Patreon, get a week for free, try it out. I'm sure you'll want to stick around. And while you're there, check out some merch. Link is down below. Till next time, everybody, for Nate, I'm Mike. Thank you for listening.